A billionaire hedge funder is warning that income inequality is turning the country into an authoritarian state and is criticizing other business leaders for not speaking out forcefully enough. This is Ray Dalio, the founder of the hedge fund Bridgewater Associates, who had spoken recently to the Financial Times. Now, in this interview, he talked about some different things, but pointed out that, hey, the extreme gap in wealth that we have, yeah, that's turning us into an authoritarian state. And along with that, the collapse of trust in government, in our systems of government, is creating more and more extreme policies in the United States. Now, he has said that many Western countries have been affected by the growing income inequality, which leads voters to turn to increasingly more autocratic rulers in order to try to correct that balance. Now, of course, these autocratic rulers never do because, they tend to benefit from these systems. But anyway, here's this quote. I think what is happening now, politically and socially, is analogous to what happened around the world in the 1930s to 40s period. Classically, increased wealth and value gaps, lead to increased populism of the right and populism of the left, and irreconcilable differences between them that cannot be resolved through the democratic process. So, democracies weaken, and more autocratic leadership increases as a large percentage of the population want government leaders to get control of the system to make things work well for them. Now, here's the thing. In the US, it is the right wing that is overwhelmingly turned to authoritarianism. The left, the actual left in America, what little we have of it, is like, yo, can we have health care, please? So you got the right wing, it's like, more authoritarianism, let's crush people's free speech rights, let's crush their faces. And the left's like, healthcare? Can we have healthcare, please? That's what we want. Look, the populist left here is just calling for things that regular people want. They are nowhere near extreme. Nowhere near as extreme as the right wing has gotten. Remember, they want to deport all immigrants. Whether you're here legally or not, they will take away your legal status they already have and ship you off to El Salvador, which they have. They have tried to ban trans people from existence. They are trying to ban gay marriage. That now Kim Davis has already gone back to the Supreme Court to argue that they should overturn Obergefell. And you had Justice Clarence Thomas, who was like, when he helped to overturn Roe, was like, you know what? We should go back and revisit some of these other cases like Obergefell. So there's that. Okay, that's what they're doing. They're putting people in prison for free speech now, charging them with conspiracy, or going after people who burn a flag. Again, that is protected speech. You may not like it, but it is protected. There was already a Supreme Court decision on flag burning that says, actually, yes, that is protected speech. That's what's going on here. Okay? All of that. There is no equal comparison between the right and the left these days. So I just want to point that out for all those people that are like, I can't tell the difference between both sides. You ain't paying attention, buddy. Or you are a member of the right. If you cannot tell the difference between both the right and the left, then you are probably a member of the right. Just wanted to point that out. Again, populist left wants things that the majority of Americans want. The right wing, what they want are things that are very unpopular. You look at all the polls, right? But at the end of the day, they want a dictator daddy to go and punish their political enemies, and that is exactly what we are dealing with these days. Okay? So, but anyway, let's move on. Dalio, by the way, Dalio is not some wild-eyed leftist. He's one of those debt and deficit hawks. Okay. So now in his books, for example, Principles for Dealing with the Changing World Order and How Countries Go Broke, The Big Cycle, he has described how large annual spending deficits and unsustainable debt growth has brought the U.S. economy to the brink of a debt crisis, a situation that had worsened over many years. So he said, quote, "The great excesses that are now projected as a result of the new budget will likely cause a debt-induced heart attack in the relatively new future. I'd say 3 years, give or take a year or two." Oh, well, that doesn't sound good. That sounds very, very bad, actually. Now, it is important to note, though, that much of our debt is a result of massive tax cuts for the rich. First, the Bush tax cuts, followed by Donald Trump's first round, and now second round of tax cuts for the rich. They're pretty much the reason here that we have $37 trillion in debt. Okay. And no, I'm not saying that COVID, what happened during COVID, the COVID spending, for example, didn't contribute to that. It did. Okay. And of course, the 3 unfunded wars in the Middle East started by George W. Bush as well as our military adventurism all over the world. Since then, the Pentagon budget's nearly $1 trillion every year. Over $800 billion and continuing to rise. And again, there is the Reagan tax cuts as well. And so you have all of these things. It ain't poor people on food stamps. It ain't immigrants. It's rich people that have been hoarding wealth and not paying their taxes. That is why we're in such a giant financial hole. So now, this guy went after Trump also for trying to take over the Federal Reserve, as well as having the government buy shares in giant corporations. Dalio said attacks on the Fed would undermine the confidence in the Fed, defending the value of money, and make holding dollar denominated debt assets less attractive, which would weaken the monetary order as we know it. Well, I mean, we've already seen the monetary order get weakened. The dollar has lost about 10% of its value since January. So there you go. But he said, quote, "I'm just describing the cause and effect relationships that are driving what is happening. And by the way, during such times, most people are silent because they are afraid of retaliation if they criticize." Yes, that is true among some of the wealthy and business owners. However, others, they are silent because they're okay with this. They're okay with what's happening, okay, with the fascism. There are a lot of business owners that are not bothered by authoritarians. Why is that? It's because they get tax cuts and deregulation under right-wing authoritarians. That's it. And even if they might not personally like the dictators, I doubt that there's a lot of people in the business community that do like Trump. They shut their mouths because they're afraid of losing tax cuts and are afraid of being targeted with regulation, which again is something that dictators often do. Everything that's going on is why neoliberalism is a great example of neoliberalism that leads to fascism. Look, conditions get bad because of the extreme wealth concentration driven by neoliberal policies. And so people find that regardless of whatever party's in charge, the rich keep getting richer while they keep losing out. And again, that's a result of money in politics, where you have these rich people that buy off both parties. That's what happens. And so people keep getting screwed and screwed and screwed, squeezed and squeezed and squeezed, until there's a strong man that comes along and promises to fix everything. Now, of course, the strong man never fixes anything because they're a product of that system. They thrive on it. And when they get into power, they make money and they get more power. They concentrate that power. That's what makes them a strong man. Now, we should know this as a society because it's not like we haven't seen this before. No, but unfortunately, there are too many people out there who do not know their history. And governments like ours now have been working to suppress history, to beat down workers, to outlaw labor unions, and go after anyone who points out where this system is heading. Now, look, there are hopes in people like Zora Mamdani, right? But at the same time, you have billionaires who cause this problem by purchasing weak Democratic politicians and funding Republicans who are fascist. Well, they don't like that solution. What solution is that? Taxing the rich. That's it. Look, between the years of 1940 to about 1973, the United States actually had an amazing economy and a lot of upward mobility in the classes. You could actually start out from a lower class, mainly if you're white, let's be honest. But you could start out in a lower class and work your way up to a middle class. You could do that. And one of the reasons that it's like that is because we taxed rich people over 90%. And I'm not saying that, all rich people were taxed on all of their money at 90%. No, it's marginal. Okay, you got to understand how marginal taxes work. So basically, if you make over a certain amount of money, then that higher tax bracket kicks in. So most of the time, they weren't actually paying 90%. In fact, the majority of companies of rich people would actually reinvest the money back into their businesses and into their workforces to avoid the taxation. So that's why you can point out that, well, they didn't really ever pay 90%. Yeah, it's because they reinvested a lot of their money. And this is before you had politicians that created giant loopholes big enough to drive a truck through. Okay, so that's it. So look, what this meant was, for a time, we created a wealthier middle class. Wow. And they could actually afford the stuff that they worked for to make. Yes. But again, what changed? Money in politics, the corporate capture of our government. Ronald Reagan cutting taxes on the rich when he was president. Defunding universities. Again, that was a Ronald Reagan thing, right? When he was governor of California. His education secretary was like, we need to stop funding universities because we are in danger of creating an educated proletariat. We do not like that. Then you also had the erosion of labor rights. Once again, Ronald Reagan, it's almost like this guy is, patient zero for where everything started to go wrong. Yes, he crushed some of the labor unions and did a whole bunch of other things that were basically the start of why everything went wrong. Fast forward since then, about 50 years. We don't have a middle class anymore. Rich people have captured pretty much all of the economic gains over that last period of time. Well, we are getting, economic recessions, which have battered everyone else but the rich and have made us poorer than each generation before us. The baby boomers essentially were the last generation to have done better than their parents. Each following generation has actually fared worse. An economy that has been rigged against them. Trump's only the latest example of how bad it has become. But for my life, this month I'm going to be 42, right? Things have not been good my entire life. Okay, and have been steadily getting worse and worse and worse. There is very little economic mobility these days. And a lot of this is a result of course, the billionaires and the policymakers that they have purchased in order to pass laws that benefit their donors at our expense. Now, this guy gets some credit for getting it, kind of. I wish more billionaires would get it. Although, really, if I got my wish, there wouldn't be billionaires. Okay. That said, most of them are silent or are busy bankrolling more neoliberal politicians like Andrew Cuomo, for example. getting back to Mamdani in New York, right? Who's getting funded by, these other billionaires, Trump-supporting billionaires, okay, in order to try to stamp out someone like Mamdani, who is not some wild-eyed leftist, who's just somebody who wants the city to work for the people. Look, what I'm saying here is, at the end of the day, we are not getting out of the situation that we are in by doing these same old politics. Neoliberalism is a dead end. It leads us to exactly what we are facing here right now, today. What's the solution? The solution is to go left before there isn't a country left. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, subscribe, hit the bell icon in order to get notified whenever a new video is released. And if you want to support independent, progressive media through this difficult time where it seems like everybody is shutting down, you can become a member on our YouTube page, you can become a subscriber on Facebook, or you can go to my Patreon. It's patreon.com/Jeff Waldorf. Thank you.